And most of us are asking really lousy questions. We're saying, why am I so fat? Why am I so broke? Why don't I have love in my life? And what's happening is when we're asking those questions, our unconscious mind is literally going out there and trying to find the solutions to answer our questions. And so one of the ways that's really, really helped me is just to start my day thinking about what I want and asking it in terms of a question, and then just letting my unconscious do the work. Why do I feel so abundant today? Why do I have so much love in my life? Why is it so easy for me to eat right and move my body? Why do I love what I do? And all of that, and you can make it unique for yourself. And that's just a little simple tip.
Of the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast with your host, Harrison Ma. This podcast sets the loving intention of creating the mystical space. Before we continue this beautiful chat today, wonderful souls, I need to jump in here to share something really exciting. If you've been following these episodes or you've been following me on social media, you know that I am in the process of releasing my first book, Your Cosmic Love Antenna, Define, Embody, and Emit Your Unique Frequency of Love. And at the time of this episode release, pre-orders are now open. If you have been pulled to this show, if you're looking to understand the what, the how, and the why of love, if you're looking to apply some of the tools connected to your chakras, inner child, releasing religious trauma, ancestral healing, emotional release, and so much more, then this beautiful expression from my heart to yours is for you. If you are looking to channel more of your unique gifts and the divine frequency that you are, these pages will open all of this up. And if you're interested, all you need to do is go to cosmicloveantenna.com. That's cosmicloveantenna.com. And you can pre-order this book right now. If you pre-order, click on that link, put in your email, you're going to get access to some special gifts that I'm only offering to those who get in before I release it fully. These gifts are going to be some more channeled meditations, activations, and some other surprises from my heart to yours. So head over to cosmicloveantenna.com, pre-order this beautiful expression, and I can't wait to hear how it shifts your life. If you're listening to this after pre-order sales, that same link can be also used to go to the direct purchase link. Sending love, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of this episode today. Good evening, morning, afternoon, beautiful beings. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to a deep dive into the mystical, spiritual world, where the intention of this chat today, as always, is to pull back the layers restricting health, alignment, and love. And this conversation is no different, with a powerful man and a powerful topic that I know is going to open up some abundant pathways in your life. Before I get into it, as always, a quick foundation and the setting of an intentional box. If you are watching live today on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, all the social medias, please leave your comments in the chat down below, and I'd love to feature them in this conversation if something bubbles up for you. If you're listening on the podcast, please share this out far and wide with someone that you think it can support and help. The powerful Jason's going to drop a lot of gems today, so you're going to want to listen to the end and share this with someone that you think can help activate their abundance frequency. On that note, I want to introduce the powerful being, the powerful soul friend that is Jason Pickard. Jason is a financial abundance advisor. He's a healer, a dreamer, and a fellow spiritual loving soul. Today, with his guidance, with his support, we're going to flow back and forth about the topic of the abundance archetype, getting to the flow state with abundance, breaking free from scarcity. What is the truest nature of affluence, and why your purpose matters? with all that, Jason, welcome back to the Cosmic Love Antenna, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be back. What a pleasure.
And this time in the live that we're doing, everyone can see your beautiful home. And I was just commenting, I mean, I'm sure we'll maybe talk about some of the symbology in your background and your travels. But the opal diamond whiteness is very appealing, Jason. How does it make you feel living in your home?
Well, it's kind of funny because you're sitting there in the dark and I'm here in the light. So we have the polarities going, which is really one of the keys to mastering abundance, is flowing with the light and the dark.
It really is. And we're going to get into that today. I'm sure of it. Jason, I don't want to waste any time here today. I want to get straight into it. I want to get straight into the juices of it because you have so much to share. I had the pleasure of checking out your beautiful program that you're offering the world that we're going to talk about at the end of the chat. But the name of it is the name of this episode today, and it is the Abundance Archetype. And I'm wondering if we could start this conversation with a quick synopsis of what is that? What is the Abundance Archetype for people tuning in that are new to this? How do you describe this to the new soul wanting to dive into this area?
Right. So the archetype is sort of the organizing motif or the source code or North Star of where we're going. It's the organizing principle. And abundance, that's a word that gets thrown out a lot. We hear it, especially in spiritual circles. Oh, manifesting abundance. It's very, very commonly spoken. And like many words, such as spirituality and God, I like to dive deep and really find out, what does that actually mean? And what does it actually mean to me? What is abundance to me? And so I dug into the etymological dictionary, which I like to use. Many of us use traditional meaning-based dictionaries, but if you want to really understand more deeply where words come from and what they mean in their origin, an etymological dictionary or a root-based dictionary can be really helpful to discover that. So when I looked up the word abundance, it came from the root word unda, U-N-D-A. And unda comes from the Sanskrit word varuna, which is essentially the personified laws of nature or the intelligence or the spirit of water. And so we're 80% water beings, or, Paul Chek says we're 99.9% water by molecular count. And so abundance is literally unda us.
Yeah.
It's flowing within us.
Yeah.
But often we're looking for abundance on the outside. So it really starts with a reversal of going from your attention being on various objects outside of you to you, the subject, now becoming the object. So abundance is learning to flow with life. And this fluidity creates fluency and affluence. And so for me, ultimately, if I had to sum it up, it's that no matter what life throws at you, no matter if you have the high or the low, you're able to know who you truly are and stay authentic to that despite life's circumstances. And ultimately, that is abundance. It's not all about necessarily having everything go right all the time. That's sort of an immature concept about life. But it's that no matter what life throws at you, you don't get knocked off your center. And to me, that's ultimately what I found abundance to mean.
Yeah. So much is already activating within me from what you just said, Jason. And this is really why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think people tuning in can probably relate to this. And I know you relate to this. We've spoken about this in our last chat. We get stuck in the belief system that abundance, it's just monetary. It's just It's just money or digits coming into my account. And based off that upward trend or downward trend, my value, my worth that you were just highlighting beautifully is dependent on that, is identified by that, is that. And that's not what I heard you say, right? And I want to go back to the under sort of foundation of abundance. When you're talking about flow, I think we can use the example, and this is probably where I want to take this next, Jason. I think we can use flow within money as an example of what the truest state of abundance is. So let me pass an example by you, Jason, and I want to see if this resonates. Something that I'm really coming to understanding around is with any kind of spending, if we can see that spending or receiving money is really just that flow that you're talking about, like me spending on my services or me spending on bringing in someone to support me, and then that person spending on my services. That is an example of that flow that you're talking about, right? There's an exchange and then a receivership. There's an exchange and then a receivership. Does that example resonate?
For sure, on many levels. So when I looked up the word wealth etymologically comes from well-being. Wealth, which we never would think has to do with well-being, actually comes from the root word well-being. And well-being comes from wheel. And wheel actually comes from chakras, or literal wheels of energy in our body. So to be wealthy means to have well-being and to participate in the wheel of life, which means that real wealth is not about how your wealth sits in your bank account. It's not a static answer. It's more of a dynamic approach, meaning it's not how much wealth you possess, but how much your wealth performs. It's less about net worth and more about net impact. So when you're participating in that wheel, when the products and services that you make are benefiting others, when there's reciprocity with what you're producing with nature, and you're in that flow of not taking too much and not giving too much and all of that, you're truly wealthy. And at the same time, money is currency and currency is current. So anytime you're flowing and you have a current or an exchange of, could be presence with somebody, could be mentorship, could be friendship, could be saying a kind word. All of those are that's a current of energy, which is essentially a form of currency.
It's beautiful. I just want to welcome Ali and Jackie. I see you in the chat. Thank you for joining, my friends. Again, if you're watching live, if anything moves through you, bubbles up, you want to ask Jason or myself, please pop it in the comments and I'll add your beautiful voices into the chat. Jason, something that I do, a practice that I have that connects to what you're saying around connecting into the current of abundance as it's moving through us. And I want to get your reflections on this. I, for a long time was identified by the money being my value, right? The amount of clients coming in or the people paying for my services. And I would be disillusioned in the moment of someone supporting or buying my services. In that moment, I'd feel wonderful. And I would equate that feeling of wonder and bliss and beauty in many ways to the fact that that person just bought the services. Where now, and this is what I want to get your thoughts on, I have a practice of allowing myself to feel that state. But in that moment, reminding myself that that person, the money, the exchange isn't giving me that state of abundance. It is merely helping me activate something that's been there the whole time. And the question is, how can I make this normal state more of a current? What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
Well, what it's bringing up for me is sort of tapping into the process behind what we love to do or what's moving us. So the best way I can give an example on this is that when I was a kid, I loved two things. I loved drumming and magic. And
it's not a surprise.
Yeah, those are my total love affairs, right from an early get-go. And nobody in my family had anything to do with that in terms of, I didn't have a drummer or a David Copperfield or something in my family. It's just a natural instinct from my soul. And, I later went on and became a Wall Street trader. And what I realized there is that what made me a good trader was actually the fact that I could tap in to the rhythm of the market. It was in some way a drumming. It was a keeping time with the market. And I also got these same aha moments when I actually made profits, literally what seemed like out of thin air. And then when I left Wall Street and became a therapist and a coach, I realized that my job was helping my clients actually tap into their rhythm, how to create rituals in their life. And every time when I gave them a piece of knowledge and opened their mind to something, they got that same aha moment. And I felt that same kind of, wow, like this is really a big deal. So what I realized is that it wasn't really about being the drummer or the magician. It wasn't really about being the trader or the therapist. It's that there's something behind that that's moving us, and that it actually is there from when we were a child, that it's really our purpose for being here. And when we are aligned to that, we feel fully alive and fully abundant.
Yeah. And I know, Jason, because we've done this already, and I'd recommend people, I'll put our first chat in the show notes. I know that Jason and I could have a very deep conversation about what is that thing that's behind it all. And we may get to it in this conversation, but I want to honor today, Jason, maybe some of the practical steps to allow this presence to be in our lives more often, right? To allow this abundance archetype to be being present with us, being with us most of our time. So let's talk some other components here, Jason, because I wanted to break down in your beautiful offering that you're giving the world. There are different parts that activate and bring about this abundance archetype. And I think one I want to sort of jump to here that I think a lot of people listening can get a lot of value from is activating a flow state. Because in many ways, as you've already alluded to, the flow state channels this abundance archetype or this abundance frequency. So I'll throw you here, Jason. One, maybe to define how the flow state impacts this abundance archetype, and maybe we can start to break down some tools to bring it about.
Sure. So that's a big question, but we'll just take it one at a time. So, what's flirting with me actually is behind you. You have the symbols of the chakras above the Cosmic Love Antenna banner.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I found was that really understanding the chakras were the keys to generating flow states and ultimately being in that abundant state. And so, I was doing a lot of study on flow science, and flow science is these days it's quite well publicized. Jamie Wheel from Stealing Fire and Stephen Kotler do a great job talking about flow. Meagher, Csikszentmihalyi, was an author from the 60s and 70s until recently when he passed away, is sometimes coined like the father of flow states. And he even gives credit back to William James, American psychologist in the late 1800s. But I never really got a sense of how to actually get into these flow states. Like, what are the actual practical steps that I can do each day to help get into the flow and to help actually make my life a container of flow and abundance? So when I dug into William James, I found that his trail actually led all the way back to India and back to yoga. And what I found was that the 8 limbs the 8 limbs to Ashtanga yoga were essentially our ancestors' way of systematically and scientifically creating flow states. And then that was like a light bulb that went off for me, where I then used the outline of the 8 limbs to Ashtanga yoga as really the outline for my course in creating my 8 steps to developing flow and mastery and abundance.
I love that, Jason. So let's go into this a little bit around yoga, because first of all, thank you for tuning into the chakra symbols in my journey. And I've shared this on the show many times. The journey through the different chakra portals and gateways has been quite an awakening for me in my own experience. And I think let's dive into this a little bit, because each of the chakra centers, as I'm sure you know, especially in relation to yoga, it helps us release. And what I mean by this is, and this affects our relationship to abundance, we move throughout our day taking on a lot of belief systems, a lot of thought forms, a lot of limiting systems that keep us in old frameworks, such as scarcity, right? Such as maybe some of the ones we've already talked about. And I've found, Jason, in relation to the chakras and yoga, when we are doing a practice, whether it's Ashtanga, I'm a yin practitioner, as an example. When we do a yoga practice and we're supporting the body and we tune into a specific area, let's say the heart chakra, we can start to become aware of the things that we've taken on throughout our day, maybe from our family, our friends, our culture, our religion, and we can make a choice. We take our agency back, and we start to realize what we can let go of that's stopping us from tapping into our innate potential. An example being this abundance that we're talking about. So I'm wondering your thoughts on this in your experience, Jason. Have you noticed this, let's call it sensitivity around yoga and the chakras and your abundance?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, really, like I said before, I think ultimately each one of the chakras is actually a key component to moving up the scale to being fully embodied and to be fully actualized and individuated. The key for me to abundance and how it correlates to yoga is that what I've found through yoga is that really the essence of yoga, the reason to do these practices, these movement practices, to do all of these different things, working with belief systems or working with anything for that matter, is to ultimately know who you truly are. That's the essence of it. That's the core, is know who am I? Why am I here? Where did I come from? And where am I going? And what is my authentic nature? And how do I live my life well? Mm-hmm. Right? It's when we go into a yoga studio, it's not so much to have like better abs or to do longer planks, or it
starts with that for some people.
Yeah, but if you go into India, you're not going to find actually what we would call a yoga studio. That's part of their life and their culture that would be taught in kindergarten. Would be these things everybody would learn. This is part of normal education. We learn to read and write. And they learned to do that, and also how to do, downward dog in various poses for that matter. So, the thing about abundance is that there's only ever one of you on this earth. The universe is a novelty generator. There's literally only one Harrison, and there's only one Jason, and there's only one of any of us, and there only will ever be only one of us with these exact fingerprints. We've all come in with our unique skills, gifts, and talents, and strengths and weaknesses. We've come in with a particular purpose. And the more we can lean into that, the more that we can really amplify our uniqueness and individuate in that, the more successful we can be, because nobody else has our unique makeup of our skills and our strengths.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding your way and your process and who you really are. And when you find that, which is really the essence of yoga in my mind, you're going to become naturally abundant.
Yeah. Getting me fired up over here, Jason, just listening to this. Yoga, one of its root meanings is bring together, right? Is bring together. Bring what together? In many ways, how I answer that question is bring the parts of us that are stuck in fragmentation, illusion, separation, trauma, pain, back into our heart, our oneness, so we can remember that state, right? That baseline bliss, that frequency of love, divinity, source, whatever you want to call it, that you are. And this is what I really appreciate, Jason, as I've sort of tuned into your offering and your program and this beautiful gift you're giving the world. It's not just yoga that you're bringing in to help people activate this archetype. And this is where I sort of want to take it next here now. I want to ask you about the term working in, and it relates to yoga. It includes yoga, I would assert, but there's so much more to it. So I'd love to hear you speak about working in, Jason, but specifically in relationship to the abundance archetype and why it matters.
Yeah. So just like you need money to make money, right? Often you have to spend some money and then invest in something to get a return. In the same way, you need energy to make energy. And so many of us in the corporate world and just in general are running around using up all of our energy all the time. You know, we think about where our money's going, but we don't really think about where our time is going. And that's a whole nother topic we can get into, or where our energy is going. So most of us wake up and we're stressed out. We're looking at our phones and we're going to work and we're working really hard all day. We have bills to pay, obligations, all of these things. And then what do? We go into the gym and we work out. And working out, when we're going to the gym, if we're going on the treadmill or we're exercising or we're doing anything like that, if we're doing anything that's elevating our heart rate and we're sweating and breathing heavy, we're actually in a state where we're using our energy. It would be a yang or a yang expression. Now, working in, when you're doing slow moving breathing, where you could have a conversation, where your heart rate's not elevated, where you're not breathing heavier, your respiration rate stays the same. When you're moving and breathing in that particular way, which would be, sort of soft yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong or various exercises like that, you are actually paradoxically creating energy. You're actually bringing energy in, which is where Paul Chek coined the term working in. So a really cool way that I think everyone should really know is that your morning heart rate when you first wake up in the morning can be a real good key about whether or not you have the energy to work out or work in. So you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do before you get out of bed is you check your morning heart rate. Over a course of a couple weeks, you start to create an average. So okay, Harrison, maybe, he's done 3 weeks of it. And he says, my average morning heart rate is 57 beats per minute. Now he gets up in the morning and he checks his heart rate before he gets out of bed. And he sees that his heart rate is 65. He's now 8 beats over his normal average. That's his body's way, his body's biofeedback, its way of telling him this is a day that you shouldn't go push yourself. This is the day you should cultivate energy and bring energy in through working in. The other example would be if you came in at your average or below your average, it would be your body's way of saying, Harrison, you're rested, you've recovered well. If you want to go out there and do some heavy workout or take on some stressful thing, we have the capacity to do that. So the other beautiful thing about this is that it actually gives you a mechanism for seeing what you did the day before and how those choices are playing out in your life. So if you come in and you say, okay, my heart rate is 5 beats or 10 beats over my average, you can ask yourself, what kind of exercise did I do yesterday? What kind of relationship challenges did I have? What happened at work? What did I eat? You know, maybe I went out for dinner last night and I ate something new, and all of these various things. And you can start to create this journal or this log of all this information. And you can also actually tap into the quality of your heartbeat, which has a feeling sense behind it, which can give you a lot of information. So ultimately, the way I use this is just like that. I just was honest with myself each day. Was this a day that I need to work out or work in or have deep rest? And then also throughout the day, especially if you're somebody who has a long working day, when you're sitting at a desk for like 8 hours or whatever, I would use these periodically to get up and to breathe and move while at my desk. Things you can do just there, 10 breathing squats or 10 hip circles or whatever it is, and breathe and move and create a lot of energy. So I did not have to rely on sugary things or stimulants or energy, whatever. And so, which ultimately mess up all of your blood sugar and your mental clarity and your emotions and many other things that really prevent you from performing at your best.
So I'm really grateful, Jason, that you're outlining this, but not just I see Ali in the comments. Ali says, Jason, you're speaking my language. And Ali's a yoga teacher trainer because what you're describing here from the physiological lens, it's so important, right? Because most of us aren't, and this is another topic that maybe we can speak about on another day, but most of us are, one, either not having this inner dialogue to work out what our biological rhythms are, or we are offloading that dialogue into machines. We're offloading it into rings. We're offloading it into, and I say this with love as someone who's in this world, biohacking equipment, right? And I think biohacking or bioharmonizing technologies can have a place, but they need to be on the road back to what Jason is saying. They need to be on the road back to your own inner dialogue and inner intelligence. But I just want to add this, Jason. It's more than just physiology, right? As you know, when I was hearing you speak, what I was also getting is when we start to tune into these biorhythms, the heart rate variability being an example, or your heart rate in general, it also allows us to know when to be in our divine masculine and when to be in our divine feminine, right? And these are the two polarities, and this is what I want to get your perspective on now. These are the two polarities, in my opinion, that we need to balance for this abundance or this affluence or this creative flow to continue its desired movement, right? And as an example, and then I want to get your thoughts on this. If I'm always in my divine masculine, always doing, always taking action, then I'm not allowing that inspired feminine to speak within my stillness. And conversely, if I'm always in my divine feminine, in the stillness, in the being, then I'm not manifesting into the 3D. I'm just in the channel all the time. So I'm wondering, Jason, what are your thoughts on this divine masculine, divine feminine? How does this relate to the abundance archetype?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. So I think it's in our culture right now, especially where I came from in the Wall Street world, people have the masculine down pretty good. It's very action-oriented, doing-oriented, a lot of logical, linear, left brain analysis, number crunching type stuff. But that's only half the picture. That's just the parts, but the whole comes when we access the right brain, which is our more feminine side and has access to our intuition, our innovation, our imagination, our creativity. Could really think of new and novel ideas and solve problems in new ways that we never thought about before. So I think that it's actually essential, this marriage. And I want to bring up a point about how essential this is, because we're in a world right now of ever expanding artificial intelligence. And in my course and in my Wall Street world, the number one thing that my boss, Paul Tudor Jones, who's considered one of the greatest investors of all time, would ask people when they would come in, he would say, what is your competitive edge? What is it that you do that differentiates you from anyone else? How do you create stable, repeatable returns that are unique? And be able to explain it in simple terms was another cool thing that he would add. He would want you to do it at an elementary reading level, knowing that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, as Mark Twain said. But so I really thought about this. I'm thinking about AI, and what can AI do really well? Well, it can do all of those sort of left brain, logical, linear analysis very, very well. But what doesn't it have? And what is our competitive edge? Well, AI doesn't have a heart. AI can't dream at night. It doesn't have 5 billion years of evolution pumping through its body. That's like the most incredible market research. But we've forgotten about all of our inner gifts. We've forgotten about the wisdom of our body and the intelligence in our cells. We've forgotten about the power of our heart, the power of having values and discernment and intuiting and pattern recognition and future prediction. And we forgot about that we might have the best official intelligence, which is dreaming, that we can go to bed at night and literally sleep and have incredible insights into how to make our life better. So I think it's absolutely essential that we get back to integrating the action with the listening, the left brain with the right brain, the masculine with the feminine, for our sake as humanity, and also to be successful and abundant in the world.
Oh, I love it. I'm really excited that you brought in the AI piece here, Jason. Have you, just a quick question, because I want to share something with you. Have you become aware of ChatGPT? Do you know what that is?
I have become aware of it.
Yeah. And so let's talk about this, because this is an example of what you're alluding to here with AI. And for those that are new to this, ChatGPT it came out at the end of last year and is the first public domain artificial intelligence that basically you can just go on to ChatGPT and input a question or input something more complicated, like write an essay for me on a particular topic, and then ChatGPT, due to its artificial intelligence, produces that essay as if someone wrote it. And this is what I really sort of want to add to this point here. And I want to get your thoughts on this, Jason. I think there's both sides of this story at the moment, and this connects to abundance very deeply. There's a lot of both fear of ChatGPT due to its that left brain ability, and then there's also a lot of openness to what you just said in terms of what are some of the things it will help us move through. In terms of if I'm a busy entrepreneur, for example, I can use ChatGPT to get my to-do list done, or make my calendar schedule. And I don't think it's black or white, right? And this is the point I want to ask you about. I've seen ChatGPT produce some pretty crazy outputs in terms of it being, quote unquote, similar to what a human can do. But as you were just explaining, especially if you're an intuitive person, you can actually feel the output and what it makes. And you can feel that it's empty without better words. You can feel that there's nothing there. You can feel that there's, as an example, there's no heart, there's no frequency, there's no passion behind the thing that it's outputting. And I think this is a positive, because now, and this is what I want to get your thoughts on, ChatGPT is forcing us to activate these abilities, right? It's forcing us into a corner where we have to turn on the heart, where we have to turn on our intuition, where we have to turn on the divine feminine to balance what it's creating. What are your thoughts on this, Jason?
Wow. So, one of the things I learned from Paul Chek was that there's no bad food. There's just wrongly prescribed food. There's no bad medicine. There's just incorrectly prescribe medicine. And the same thing could be said with technology. But I do feel that there are some challenges that are coming up, and I'd like to speak on a few of them. So I mentioned earlier Meagher Csikszentmihalyi, one of the flow science fathers. And he did a whole study about happiness. And what he found was that when people had a baseline level of money, essentially once their survival needs were met, that having any more money after that did not equate to happiness. Of course, if you're in poverty, that's not the case. But once you have whatever the baseline, let's say, enough to pay your bills, have food, water, shelter, etc., and feel safe, any more money on that did not equate to any happiness. What actually did equate to happiness was actually being in the flow, doing something that you love to do with your life and mastering it. That's what he found actually gave life happiness. So interestingly, if we look at the chat GPT, I think we're going to learn that it's not actually having the essay written for us that actually brings us any sense of satisfaction or joy in life, but it's more so the process of getting there, the process of being in the flow, of researching, of learning and growing. I mean, one of my teachers, Jeffrey Armstrong, says this is not a universe, it's a university. We're actually here to grow and learn. And so to give over that ability to a machine to get it done quickly really kind of skips over the purpose of why our soul is actually even here in the first place, to learn and grow. We've heard all these quotes, the process is the destination, right? The journey is the destination. It's not so much what happens in terms of the outcome, but it's more important about how we get there and how we engage with life. And for me, when I'm doing art or music, it's not so much about what I produce, but it's about the process of doing it and what that invokes inside of me. It's allowing that creative spirit or that art spirit or that music spirit to flow through me and to co-create with that. And that's, for me, that I never feel any more alive than when that's happening. So I think we're really sapping life out of life when we just rely completely on technology to do everything for us without realizing that that's not really the purpose of why we're here.
What a beautiful reflection, Jason. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And I just got an image as you were sharing of all of the painful moments. Let's just keep using the essay example, right? All of the painful moments in high school and university where I was putting in the work to do the essays. And I just think about all of those pain teachers and what they brought me, right? And it was irrelevant to what the outcome was, what I produced. But, all the friends that I made when I went to seek support and helping the essay, all of the, I studied abroad. So, a lot of my travels came from, going to see someone based off the essay. So yeah, it's a beautiful example. And it's a reminder that, coming back to the abundance archetype, that creative flow comes from the stimulus of doing the work, right? In many ways. Jason, I want to shift here now to something we've hit on a little bit, but I want to dive into more specifically before we run out of time here today. And it is probably the most, I would actually classify this as the barrier, in my opinion, to being in this abundance archetype more often is the limiting illusion, belief. It's almost a societal infrastructure at this point of scarcity, of the limitation that is scarcity. That, I'll just give examples. If Jason earns certain amount of people or gets certain amount of clients, that means Jason is taking from my potential to get that same amount of client. Or I am born into this world and I need to work and do all the things before I can get what I am worth, right? And those are just two very basic examples. So I'm wondering, Jason, how does one start to break through the illusion that is the belief system of scarcity?
Well, there's much more simple ways in my course than what I'm about to say, actually. I didn't really go there with my course, but you said you wanted to dance today. So I'm just kind of going with what's coming up. Dude, I'm curious what you think about this too, but I think one of the things that yoga taught me, which was very helpful for the scarcity mindset, is to recognize that the one lifetime worldview is a disease.
Yes.
We have this idea that there's only one shot and we have to take. We have to have more right now and extract. Not recognizing that we're on this infinite, endless journey and that we should really be more concerned with our 7 generational return. Well, how does this act that we're doing now, how does this impact the next 7 generations so that not only our children and their children have a place to live, but also maybe we would like a nice place to come back to someday if we're still on that journey. And so, that's just one of the things that I think is a missing vitamin in our education system that puts a lot of people on edge all the time to make them feel like they never have enough and that there is a limited amount and that they have to get more and more right now. In my course, I one of the things that are coming up, which is more of a simple thing for people that has really worked for me, oddly, is the work of Noah St. John. And Noah St. John talks about this concept of affirmations. So we've all heard of affirmations, AFFIR, but he has AFFOR, affirmations. And what he says is that the reason that affirmations often don't work is because we don't believe them. If we say to ourselves, why am I, if we say, I am so abundant or I am rich, there's a part of our mind that says, I don't believe you. Yeah, right, man. You're not. But if we actually form it in terms of a question, if we say, why am I so abundant? Why is it so easy for me to feel rich? What happens is your unconscious starts to search for answers, start to search for the answers. And so, just like in the same way, if we said, oh, I really want to buy a new blue convertible. And then we notice that every time we drive down the street, we start noticing blue convertibles. Well, it's unlikely that there's any more than there was before blue convertibles on the street, but we're signaling to our unconscious to actually start to pay attention because we're saying, this is what we want. And most of us are asking really lousy questions. We're saying, why am I so fat? Why am I so broke? Why don't I have love in my life? And what's happening is when we're asking those questions, our unconscious mind is literally going out there and trying to find the solutions to answer our questions. And so one of the ways that it's really, really helped me is just to start my day thinking about what I want and asking it in terms of a question, and then just letting my unconscious do the work. Why do I feel so abundant today? Why do I have so much love in my life? Why is it so easy for me to eat right and move my body? Why do I love what I do? And all of that, and you could make it unique for yourself. And that's just a little simple tip.
I love it, Jason. I think that's a beautiful tip. And, just to speak to it, and I want to go back to what you said about multiple lives, because it's such a significant element that we need to dive more into. But I do, and I'm sure you do too, Jason, I do think there is still a place for, using those affirmations and the parts of us that don't believe it, because I think when we can address those parts of us that don't believe, what are those parts, right? In my experience, usually those parts that don't believe it are the inner child or, other traumatic events that if we can soothe and we can move through, then they stop projecting and creating a reality of non-abundance, right? But I really like this questioning of the affirmation, because based off all that we've said today, we have the answers. So every possible question that you could ask, the answer, and this is so cliche to say, but it's very true, especially in this context today, the answers are inside of you. They're there. But that's not the issue. The issue is we're not asking the questions. We're not allowing the truth to move through us because we aren't creating the space for it to come up. And these affirmations sound like that exact tool. But let's go back to the past lives, Jason, because I think your beautiful intuition, I just want to affirm it, because I know in my life, I'll just give my example, that rat race energy of having to get and do all the things, it did fall away once I started, in my own practice through past life regressions and deep activation, starting to experience past lives and understand that greater reality. It starts to help you remember that. And I guess this is what I want to get your thoughts on here, Jason, in relation to this. There's a lot of religious programming in us, whether in this lifetime or past lifetimes. And a specific example of this programming connected to the abundance and the rat race is, I am constantly judged for my actions. I am constantly judged as a man on a cloud outside of me, keeping score of whether I get all the things or don't get all the things, whether I do this thing or I don't do this thing. But if you take in this past life understanding, it starts to break through that illusion. What bubbles up for you around this, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's spot on, across the board. You said so many different things in there. What yoga teaches is that the missing vitamins, so to speak, in our culture are the multiple lifetime worldview. The second one is the fact that there's a divine feminine that has a completely different spin on just having a masculine only supreme being. And the third one is that we live in a purposeful, intelligent universe surrounded by intelligence. Most of our belief systems in our culture are based on this idea that, the trees and the wind and the birds, it's all just random, that this whole thing that we're looking at is completely random. But, imagine walking into the most beautiful art gallery and you're looking at all the art on the wall. You wouldn't think, oh, all of this just got here randomly. It just like matter just collided together and built this building. And, there's obviously an artist and a director and a CEO and somebody who's opening the door and the receptionist and a million different departments that are required to make this art gallery. Well, if we believe in as above, so below, then the macro or the universe itself must be populated with incredible intelligence that's behind all of what we see. And when we walk outside and we see the most beautiful art gallery, which is the earth we're living in, to recognize the intelligence that is actually populating that. And so I think these three things that are missing from more of our, might we say, Judeo-Christian, more kind of Western culture are really, really key pieces that develop our belief systems that influence how we make choices in our life, and most of which I don't think are really serving us very well.
No, which is why I'm really grateful for you, Jason, and the work that you're doing, and this gift of this program that you're giving the world. It helps us bring conscious awareness to the unconscious patterns that are creating our reality, right? Because in many ways, that's what's happening here, where, and this is another piece of it, but another limiting belief is that we're not creative beings, right? I grew up thinking that only certain people were creative. If I saw the powerful Jason on his drums growing up, I would have said, oh, Jason has that creative bug, but I don't have it because I can't do that. Where in reality, we're all creating all the time. It's just most of us are creating the reality that doesn't serve us. Most of us are creating that partnership that is toxic. Most of us creating that work environment that is hindering our light rather than expanding it. Do you agree with that, Jason?
Yeah, of course. And, it's just, I'm laughing because I just made a little bit, a post earlier today for a future Instagram talking about music and talking about this creative potential. And I spoke about how, my whole life I played the drums, but I always looked at people who could sing or play more instrumental or melodic instruments as that's not something that I could ever do. That's not me. I don't have those skills. The same thing with art for that matter. But one of the things that really turned me on, which I think is really cool, is I was studying Victor Wooten, who's an incredible bass player and author of The Music Lesson. And he talks about that when you play music, you're only ever a half step away from the right note. Meaning, if you look at a piano and you're going from the note C to C, one full octave, there's only 12 possible notes that you can play: C, C sharp, D, E, etc. If you picked any key, like if someone said, okay, let's play the key of E, let's play the key of D, there's always going to be 7 notes that are in the key, and then there's 5 that are out of key. So literally, if you know nothing about music, if you know nothing about the piano, even if you don't know what key you're supposed to be in, if you just picked any note on the piano, if you were just courageous enough to try, you have a 7 out of 12 chance, or a 58% chance of actually being on the right note. When you go to the casino, if you play roulette, the house has like a 2.25% edge every time you play roulette. This is like a 15 to 20% edge every time you play a note. As long as you're brave enough to play, the odds are literally in your favor. As long as you get over your edge, it's telling you not to do it.
Yeah, that's the key, pun intended, right there, Jason. It's the courage to break through the illusion of, most of it, if we break it all down, it's fear. But I'm not good enough. I'm not creative. I'm not divine. Whatever it is. It brings up the quote of Joseph Campbell: the cave that you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek. And in that moment, that's a big cave, right? As soon as you enter it, the truth of that abundant archetype and that creation energy, it's there waiting just for you to embody in other ways.
Yeah, this is a good segue to one thing about,
please.
One of the keys to flow states in terms of, the more traditional flow research is that your challenge has to be about 3 to 4% above your current skill level. Meaning that life satisfaction and flow doesn't come from having easy wins. If you were a beginner chess player and I was, a grandmaster, I wouldn't get any satisfaction actually from just beating up on you in 2 seconds. But actually, if I was playing somebody who was better than me and who challenged me, win or lose, I actually get more life satisfaction and can actually enter that flow state because, I'm right on that edge of it not being too much above my skill level to really overwhelm me, but not too low and not too easy to bore me out, right? So one of the things that I encourage everybody to do is to find little safe ways each day to just go slightly over your stuck points or slightly over your edge. Challenge yourself slightly over your current skill level. Now that could be something in the health world, like go in the sauna, go in the cold plunge, maybe do a little mini fast or go into a darkness or meditation or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, right? But it can actually be quite simple. It could be, maybe I'm just going to try out something new in bed with my partner. Maybe I'm going to say something. I'm going to really tell somebody how I really feel that I've been holding back from this person. I just want to tell, Harrison, I want to tell you how much I enjoy this opportunity and, to be here with you instead of just holding that in, right? Yeah. Just a little bit over, it could be, sending a handwritten letter instead of an email, or walking across the office and telling somebody feedback in person instead of, calling them on the phone. It's these little things. We systematically practice them, slightly going over our comfort zones each day. And that's one of the keys to cultivating flow and a happy life.
What a powerful tip, Jason. I relate to all those examples, but very deeply with the speaking your emotional truth, right? And for everyone tuning into the podcast, you know how many episodes I've done on the significance of this, right? When we show up in that emotional state with whatever is on our heart, it doesn't just help us, and this is a point to add here, it doesn't just help us connect into this abundance and this flow state that you were just highlighting, but it also gives an example for other people, right? Because most of us are wanting to do the same thing. We want to have the courage, we want to have the confidence to, in this example, speak the thing that needs to be spoken. But when I see Jason doing it, there's a part of me that says, if Jason can do it, I can do it too, right? So you're also leading by example. I want to share something here, Jason, that came up as you were talking about leaning into the fear. And I want to quote one of our mutual mentors, Mr. Paul Chek, because this is a very powerful tip that he provides that I embody, is shifting from the understanding that instead of having winners and losers, we have winners and learners, right? So in that example of I speak the truth, and let's say Jason doesn't receive it in his heart and Jason is triggered by my emotional expression. In that moment, I haven't lost Jason. I haven't lost in that event of expressing myself. In Jason's potential outburst, I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm learning, how do I react to Jason being triggered? How do I react to Jason, speaking his truth in relation to mine? So I think, just to summarize that, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jason, is shifting to that mindset that there's no losers, just learners.
100%. And that's why I put it as one of the keys in my course and how to develop a process.
I thought I read it.
Yeah. So, turning, losing into learning or losses into lessons, right? If you look back at your life, like you said earlier, and we've talked about this, with the pain teacher, but if you look back at your life, you realize how much you learn from all those more difficult times, and how you really did not learn nearly as much from many of the highs in your life. If I wasn't 330 pounds, if I wasn't obese, nearly sick and dying in my 20s, there's no way I'm here today writing the Abundance Archetype. I mean, it's as simple as that. So this is a real key to my course, and I could go on with many examples, but one of them from an investing perspective is my old boss, Paul Tudor Jones, would say that blowing up, like having a really bad loss, blowing up while trading is a necessary stop into becoming a great trader and a great risk manager. Meaning that one must have to know what it feels like, have the felt sense and the experience of having something go wrong in order for them to be able to be a great risk manager and a great trader. I studied with Grandmaster William C. Chen for many years. I still do, a Tai Chi Grandmaster in New York City. And he says, invest in loss, right? It's like the person who gets a bad call in a martial arts match, who's yelling at the ref and who's all pissed off, and, versus the person who goes back and studies the tape and sees, what can I do differently to make sure this never happens again? Somebody who actually can learn from their losses is what I would call an infinite player. In James Carson's book, The Infinite and Finite Games, he talks about becoming an infinite player of life. An infinite player of life looks at the big picture, the long game. It's not the job, but the career. It's not the sprint, but the marathon. It's playing for the continuous love of playing and not for a particular win or loss. And that all comes from when you can actually harvest and cultivate the lessons from the losses and use it to learn and grow and become better.
The continuous love of the playing. You factor in what we were speaking about earlier around past lives, and that continuous love of playing, it just keeps going, right? Even if this physical form right now, for whatever reason, decides to stop, then there's nothing stopping me from opening to the understanding that that love will continue to play in the next incarnation. So, Jason, I just want to honor you today. Thank you for dancing with me. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and insight around this topic that you have so much, not just tips and practices, but you have experience and wisdom, and most importantly, love around. And I'm grateful that I get to receive this with you and share this with all the people tuning in live or on the podcast. I'd love to give you a bit of space now here, Jason, before we have to wrap up. If souls tuning in have been pulled and tuned to this abundance archetype, and they want to find out more about your beautiful program and what you're offering the world, where would you like to direct them, and what would you like them to know?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, the first thing that I want to tell all of you is that I have on my Instagram, which is Jason Pickard Official, or on my website, jasonpickard.org, I have a link to my 8 keys to greater wealth and well-being. So I spent a lot of time working on this document, and Harrison, you've seen it. It's really a beautiful, well-produced document. Yeah, and I took the 8 keys to mastery in my course, and I said, what are the things that I could give to people for free that could really help them create more wealth and well-being in their life if they just did these things today without using any more of their time or money or energy or resources for that matter. And so I spent a lot of time on that. And so I really encourage you to go onto my website or go onto the Instagram and click the link and get my 8 keys to greater wealth and well-being for free. And then you'll be in my system, and you can learn more about the course, the Abundance Archetype, which will be coming out probably in about early May, which I'm super excited about. I'll just say, I spent 20 years on Wall Street sitting with literally the titans of Wall Street and some of the greatest investors of all time. And then I traveled the world spending tons of money and practicing for thousands and thousands of hours, learning from some of the great masters in many different areas of the heart and soul. And it's been my life journey to really integrate those into some form of digestible information where I can teach you how to create wealth and well-being, which is really not that common out there right now. We have a big mental and physical health crisis out there across the board, but particularly in people that are in pursuit of generating wealth because they do it at a cost of their own well-being and their relationships. And that's not what we're all about here. So, that's not true abundance as we discovered today. So yeah, just check that out. If you want to know more information, feel free to DM me or message me in any ways, all those things. And I'd love to engage with you. I'd love to watch your transformation and just participate in your journey. So thank you.
As always, for people tuning in to the podcast, I'll put all of Jason's details, his website, his Instagram handle in the show notes. So you can just click on it and go straight to those details. And I just want to encourage anyone tuning in. And I say this from my heart. While I agree with you, Jason, that there aren't many people teaching on this particular topic in the way that you're teaching on it, there are resources out there, right? And we'll never be at this point onwards in a lack of information and a lack of resources. What is the differentiating factor, in my opinion, is, and I share this all the time on this show, is the love that we channel through the offerings that we're giving. And I just want to vouch for you, Jason, for everyone listening. That love is deep, and that love is expansive, and that love is vast. And in my opinion, the tools are powerful and we need to know them. But the thing that changes you is the love that it's infused with. And as someone that's been able to experience Jason in all of his essence, experience what he's offering the world, I can affirm that love is there. So I'd recommend people to follow their heart if they're being pulled. Any final words, Jason, you want to finish with before we wrap everything up?
It's just such a beautiful closing right there. I don't know how I could top that. I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm really grateful to share and thank you. I really do feel like, you're right about frequency and resonance, and I encourage everybody to just sing your song, dance your dance, tell your story, receive your vision, and be you to full. It's beautiful. So, that's the way of the yoga. That's the way that our ancestors practiced for thousands and thousands of years. And that is the way forward, just to be yourself to the fullest. So thank you, Harrison.
You're welcome.
And thank everybody. Yeah.
You're welcome, my friend. Thank you for the dance. Beautiful souls tuning in live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you for joining us today. If you're listening to the podcast, this conversation brought you value, hit your heart, please share this with a friend, a family member, or a lover. Leave your comments, feedback over on Apple and Spotify in your reviews. But as always, we love you unconditionally. And until next time here on the show, we'll see you again very soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna with me, your host, Harrison. If you gained value or this episode hit your heart, please remember to share this out with a friend, a family member, or a lover. You can also leave your love over on Apple reviews and Spotify star feedback, and this helps me spread my frequency to more souls in need. Finally, if you want to connect with me deeper, want to reach out, interested in coaching, please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Harrison Meagher, spelled Meagher. Sending you so much love.